Now we are ready to go with Tim Brando from Fox Sports with us here on Ruscin Zach. It's good to talk to you again, sir. How you doing?
Great, fellas. Good to be with both of you.
Thanks so much for the time. So, as we go through the talking season, Zach and I were talking. Of course, Steve Spurrier coined the phrase "talking season" here over the next few months. It's this. The big topic is the NCAA and name, image, and likeness, and it's hard to wrap your hands around as a fan, but it's a significant change here and it's probably the story of the offseason, as maybe a decade ago conference realignment kind of dominated the offseason headlines in the sport.
Yeah, I don't know. It was talking season. I think now we just because of the world we're living in and the culture of the times, so to speak, that we deal with in sports. I'd call it the silly season. I think there's a lot of silly blank, and you can put whatever word there in you like. It's people, I think, are overreacting to everything today. And the NIL, as best I could tell from fans' responses to it, it's almost as if the inability to comprehend or even just come to an understanding of the plight of today's modern-day internet athlete is something that the fan just doesn't want to deal with. Or at least when I say the fan doesn't want to deal with, let's just say those that engage, whether they are callers to talk shows, whether they're people that go on Twitter or social media to react. It's almost universally negative, and it shouldn't be. Name, image, and likeness is something that people in the entertainment business and performance industry have been doing forever. And the reality is that the NCAA has kicked this thing down the can with the hopes that the fans would remain as in the dark and out of touch with the changing times as they have been. And to some extent, they've kind of gotten away with it, at least in terms of what I hear. Okay, what I hear is, the same stuff all over again. Back when I played, that kind of thing. And, back when whoever is saying it, back whenever you played, whether it was in the 80s, the 90s, the 60s, or the 70s, you didn't have to be a 24/7, 365-day-a-year athlete, okay? You didn't. You could have jobs in the off-season. The NCAA prohibits that. Division I athletes can't work, and they're told in the off-season that they can't practice with their coaches, but there are, what do they call them, voluntary, but we all know they're mandatory summer workouts that take place, that the coaches themselves can't be there, but strength and conditioning coaches are. I mean, times have changed, fellas, and this thing is happening. Let me give you a classic example. You've probably seen it. Maybe you guys are on it. I don't know. Are you on Cameo? Do you guys do Cameo?
We have not arrived to that level of fame, Tim, where we are where we were sought after on Cameo, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I'm a little bit late to the party on this thing. All right, but I'm going to be on Cameo beginning next week. I haven't announced it yet, but so you got a scoop. Okay. I'll be on Cameo. All right, and it's just an easy revenue stream. It's pretty simple. Somebody wants you to record a voice recording on their phone, on their phone. I've had that happen in celebrity golf tournaments. Hey, Tim, could you do your Harry Carey for me, answering my phone line, okay? Or could you just do yourself and then go into Harry Carey? I've done that for people for free, all right, just because I liked them and we were playing golf together or something. Well, there's no reason why I shouldn't be monetized for that, correct?
Correct.
Would you guys agree?
Yeah, correct.
There's no reason that I shouldn't monetize that. Well, that's what Cameo has done. Well, I think Cameo is a perfect example of how athletes, male, female, no matter if it's a revenue-producing sport or a non-revenue-producing sport. That's a way for young student athletes to pad their wallets a little bit. And I don't think it hurts anybody, okay? I mean, it doesn't. But in today's environment, without name, image, and likeness, athletes couldn't do that. That would be considered outside the realm, inside the realm of extra benefits to the athletes. So the NCAA screwed this thing up for such a long period of time that now the states have gotten involved. They have resolutions for bills and bills that have now been enacted into law. And the NCAA was so bad with it, they kept thinking Congress would bail them out. Well, Congress can't bail themselves out of anything. I mean, they're busy trying to determine whether they're going to wear masks or not on the Senate floor. Please. Or on the House floor, excuse me. So when are they going to get to it? We don't know. But it's going to happen. It's a reality, no question about it. And I think that fans need to come to grips with that. It's not going to change the world and suddenly college players are going to be at each other's throats because one guy makes more money than the other for, a 20-second cameo spot that he might do for a friend on his cell phone. I just don't see that. I think it's the world we live in today, and college athletics needs to catch up with the real world. And we've got a lot of examples of that. And the lack of leadership, particularly from Emmert and the NCAA, has put us in this position. And we got a lot more work to be done. And I think you're about to see it with regard to expansion of the college football playoffs. So it's going to be a very active June and July, no doubt about it.
I want to ask you about something that's happening today. It was less than 10 years ago we were talking about Jadeveon Clowney opting out of his senior year to go get ready for the NFL. And we've seen guys now opting out, some due to COVID, some otherwise. But today we have a kid, the number 82 ranked recruit in the country, a running back committed to Texas named Jaden Blue, who's opting out of his senior year of high school to go get ready for college. This is, I don't want to say it's a frightening trend, but this is, like you were talking about just a minute ago, this is just sort of rolling with the times. This is where we are.
Yeah, I remember when John David Booty actually did that at Evangel Christian Academy here in Shreveport before he went to USC. It was just opting out of the spring semester. You guys remember that story when it happened? It must have been 10 or 11 years ago. I was still doing my radio show back then. I know that. And it was like, oh, my God. and it's become, getting out of your spring semester and getting to the college campus halfway through your senior year has already happened. Now, this is different, obviously. This is, hey, I'm just not going to play my senior year in high school. These kids today want to move, and they want to move fast. They believe that there are windows of opportunity, and I understand it. I mean, I do. Particularly, let's say if you're a quarterback or a running back, because the next big thing is just around the corner. That's so very true. And how long is the quote-unquote shelf life of a running back, by example, in pro football? If you notice, going back 20, 25 years in the SEC, and even in other conferences, the top picks used to be running backs. They're not anymore. And the reason is because of the change in the way the game is played. They're slinging it around. Wide receivers and quarterbacks tend to have a longer shelf life, so they go higher in the draft. And running backs, the great ones, a lot of them get hurt very quickly when they get into the league or even before they get into the league. And players, the younger kids coming up today, they've seen that. And they're smart enough to realize, hey, why should I do that to myself? I mean, they're thinking about their long-term futures, not their short-term. And listen, when all of us were young, I think, we were all thinking about the long-term, the effects that we would I know I probably didn't enjoy the moment the way I should have as a broadcaster very early in my career because I was concerned about the next big thing. What's coming next? What's on the horizon for me? I think it's very natural that athletes are going this direction. That doesn't mean they don't want the college experience. That doesn't mean that they don't want to stay there, or that this young man didn't want to have his his high school homecoming to go to. But they're thinking differently now because the players, the great ones, are identified, fellas, so much more quickly. Coming out of middle school, kids are already identified as being great talents in the future, and they're listening to people, and they're really a lot smarter than we were when we were their age.
Yeah. Tim Brando's our guest here from Fox Sports on Ruscin and Zach. Tim, I'm just curious. Do you keep a lot of things from your career? Is your office full of old charts and photos and stuff, or is that?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a hoarder. Absolutely. Yeah. A guy, young man that goes to school at Arizona State, is in the Walter Cronkite School of Broadcasting there. Did an article recently that was in the Sportscasting Journal that is put out by David J. Halberstam, and he wanted to just kind of document what average work week would be for me in terms of preparation for college football. If you didn't see it, you can just Google me and you can go and find it. It was put out, I think, a little over a week ago, and that I put one of my boards, one of my depth chart boards out from one of my past games last year between Wisconsin and Iowa. The thing looks like an F paper that you might have had on a chemistry lab, years ago, or it's just straight gibberish, something that you wouldn't understand. But I commit it to memory, and we use it to stack our information base to prepare for a game, and then we use it as a spotting board. Who made the tackle, who tipped the ball, who recovered the fumble, and that kind of thing. All of that during the course of a college football game. I never throw them out, because some of the teams I may have again, or there might be a situation that comes up years later where I'm like, gosh, I remember doing that team, calling one of their games back in so-and-so. And so I don't have a filing system, but in my attic, which is next door to my study upstairs here at the Chateau, I'll just go in there. They're turning yellow now, but they're there. And probably a fire hazard now that I think about it. But it's a lot of fun, and it's something I can look back at a lot of times to sort of document and remind myself of, where I've been, what I've done. And a lot of times you can utilize it in terms of, this kid was 30 pounds lighter when I last had them 2 years ago, right? And I go and look at it, and yeah, that's the case. I definitely hold on to old artifacts and press clippings and pictures and different things that have happened on the journey that I've been on. As I've gotten older, and especially now since I turned 65 this past February, you tend to look at life a lot differently and have perspective and think about the journey that you've been on, with the understanding that you still believe, and I really believe this, that my best broadcasts, my best games are still, in front of me. But if it all ended today, it still was a hell of a run. And this coming, by example, I've got some cassettes of my first high school football game that I did with my father in 1971. This coming September the 10th will be the 50th anniversary of the first high school broadcast I ever had between Neville High School and Captain Shreve in Shreveport. It was actually being done to a station in Monroe. I was calling Neville High School games with my dad. And I still have the cassette tapes from that. And I've held onto them for years.
College football is one of those things that just kind of gets in your blood. And I mean, we all have our favorite spots from the experience of just coming on campus to getting into the box. What are some of your favorite places that you've been to do a game?
Oh man, everywhere. And by the way, a lot of fans in the SEC will say to me, and it's really nice. Trust me, it never gets old. They'll say, "Gosh, we miss seeing you and hearing you," and I'm like, "Well, I really appreciate that. I do." Now, some will also tell you really quickly, "We're damn glad you're gone and don't come back." But I tend to remember the nice ones as opposed to the negative ones. But I was spoiled in the sense that I got such an early start, and that I visited and broadcasted in so many great places and so many events that were huge at the time. And all of the stadiums, I mean, let's face it, in the Southeastern Conference, there's not a bad spot unless you're doing, let's see, a non-conference game for Vanderbilt. I mean, the stadiums are packed literally for just about every game. And the legendary history and tradition of a college football Saturday on any campus in the SEC, and I say that short of Vanderbilt, they still are working on trying to get it right there in so many ways. But every other stop is just magnificent and always has been. But I'll tell people when they bring up the SEC and my history in it that one of the greatest aspects of my arrival at Fox, and this will be my 8th year, believe it or not. It's hard to believe it's been coming up on 8 years since I left CBS and went to Fox. But going to places in the Big Ten like the Big House, the Horseshoe, in the Pac-12, a place like Autzen Stadium in Eugene, when you had a guy that was winning a Heisman Trophy at that time and competing for a national championship, which they did in 2014. Those were thrilling locations. I have still got a couple that I haven't done. I haven't done a college football game at the Rose Bowl, by example. And I'm kind of hoping that I get a game at the Rose Bowl this year, and it might even be the LSU-UCLA game. I don't know, but I kind of hope it might be in early September, because I've never done a college football game at the Rose Bowl. And the only game I've ever done at the Coliseum in Los Angeles was a USFL game with, I think, more vendors than fans to watch Steve Young and the LA Express play the Denver Gold back in 1985. I was only 29 back then. But there are incredible spots everywhere. I'd say of the group, the most memorable stops and memorable moments where I had a chance to do the game would be the game for the boot between LSU and Arkansas. Always a great game, and whether the game was being played in Little Rock, Fayetteville, or at LSU, always great because it mattered, meant a lot. Was always at the end of the year. Tennessee, I was in Knoxville for Peyton Manning's last home game when they barely beat Vanderbilt that day. It was a very close game. That was back in '97. Cumberland Avenue, when the leaves have turned and the boys become men and all that. It's awesome. And I flew into the game with my pal Archie Manning, who was there to see his son Peyton play his final game. Any game at Notre Dame, touchdown Jesus. And I did Notre Dame when Holtz was there in '89. They were the defending national champs. They had Rocket Ismail. They had Tony Rice and Ned Bolkar and all those guys that played for Holtz's '88 team that went on to beat West Virginia for the national title. That next year, I had them against number 7 Pitt, and both teams were undefeated.
I met you.
And
I met you at that game. I met you. Yeah, I met you in the old press box.
Yeah, and then you remember that that press box was for all of the incredible tradition and history of Touchdown Jesus and Notre Dame Stadium. Once you got inside the old Notre Dame Stadium, the press box area was a hellhole.
Yeah, it was brutal.
It was not good. That NBC money, they needed to spruce it up and make it a little bit better, and they did.
If I remember right, you did that game with Vince Dooley. And,
I did.
And Rocket took off with like a 50-something yard touchdown run, and all I can remember is Vince Dooley going, "Look at that speed! Look at that speed!"
Timmy, I've never seen anyone any faster than the Rocket. His brother must be I think they called him the Missile. I said, yeah. And either one of them are faster than a bullet, Timmy. It was great. to work with Vince that year, and it was my first year after leaving College Game Day. Vince went back to becoming an athletic director at Georgia after that, and I went back to the studio for a few more years before going to Jefferson Pilot to do those early games, and then over to CBS. But those were magical moments, and when I was doing SEC games, that's pretty much all I saw. And so to go to Penn State, to go to Happy Valley for a whiteout game, or to go to the stadium where they dot the I, or Michigan, when they're playing, Hail to the Victors, and the Wolverines come out for the game with, for the little brown jug, that's a special deal. I mean, it is. They don't have to be playing Ohio State for it to be a big event at Michigan. So, and I think people overlook a lot of great places too. Like Tiger Stadium was wonderful, and I sort of grew up on that. My first impression of covering college football was the '79 game between USC and LSU when Marcus Allen was actually the fullback blocking for Charles White, who won the Heisman. That's going way, way back, but he was. Paul McDonald was quarterback. LSU almost pulled off an upset. It was Charlie McClendon's last year as head coach. And I'm a Cub reporter doing a pregame show and going down Nicholson Drive, getting there about 10 minutes into the game because I took the game. My role was to take us up to the start of the kickoff, and I was always late. But just going there and getting into that stadium and being on the photo deck with everyone, feeling that place just vibrate. I knew at that point, man, oh man, I've got to be a part of this every Saturday of my life. And I've attacked it that way throughout the years at all of my stops.
Well, we always enjoy the chat, Tim, and I'm sure we'll do it a time or two before the season gets cranked up this summer. Thank you so much, as always.
I hope so. Always good talking to you, fellas, and just give me a ring anytime. We've got plenty to talk about as we get a little bit closer to the start of the year, and all the Razorback fans there, man, you should be excited. What a job your coach did in year one, and I see the Razorbacks as being one of the real sleepers nationally this year.
Wow.
That could be a team kind of coming out of the woodwork a little bit. And I don't think they'll win the West, but I think they'll determine who does. I think they will beat somebody that thought that they could win the division and screw it up for them. And I think a bowl game is in their future, and a good one this season.
All right. Tim, thank you so much.
You bet, fellas. Anytime.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us here on Ruscin and Zach.